Today I'm navigating the most terrifying oceans ever, inhabited with the strangest fish, even stranger people, and tons of wildlife that wants to eat me. I'm going to fish myself wealthy, uncover a Lovecraftian mystery, and upgrade this vessel to the size of the Titanic. Okay, maybe not the Titanic. I played 100 Days of Dredge, and this is my story. Let's set the stage. Now we are rough down on our luck fishermen responding to a job listing for an angler. But as we're making our way there, the fog is so thick that we run into the jagged rocks along the bay. Seeing our shipwreck laying like that at the feet of the lighthouse makes me think that the lighthouse keeper may not be doing her job correctly. The next morning we wake up in the town of Marrow, which is just a super weird name for a town. The town's mayor greets us and he immediately informs us that our boat is lost to the sea, but he'll gladly sell us another replacement vessel. Why does every mayor just serve as an NPC to rip us off? Just think about it. Tom Nook from Animal Crossing, Fletch from Dinkum, and now this guy. Either way, as soon as possible I head on to the open seas. Apparently we're in some type of enclave made up of these two islands with individual towns. One is called Greater Marrow and the other one Little Marrow. Not like that's going to create any feuds between these towns. I immediately want to try out the fishing mechanic in this game, so I head towards some disturbed water where you can easily see a school of fish swimming below it. You just interact with it and your boat starts fishing. Now if you wait long enough you'll catch some fish, but doing this mini game successfully will complete it faster. And once you catch the fish you just need to place it in this Diablo-like inventory system. I knew all those hours of playing Tetris would pay off. This actually ties into how time seems to work in this game, because it only seems to advance when I'm moving with the ship or fishing. Now this may force me to be a lot more deliberate with my choices later on. I mean, the sunset seems to bring an extremely unwelcoming fog and my potential demise, so I don't want to get stuck in the middle of the ocean in the dark. As I catch my last fish for the day, a trophy mackerel by the way, I see this bottle drifting just past the rocks. It appears to be a message in a bottle from a newlywed bride who's sailing around the island together with her new husband. The note mentions how her new hubby just renamed the boat to Julie, which I assume is the name of the bride as well. Now apparently the message was written in August of 1927, so this bottle must have been drifting around for quite some time. As I turn around after reading the note and head back to town, the sun disappears beyond the horizon when the clock strikes 7 PM. Suddenly the fog rolls in and this freaky eye shows up on top. Now I'm not sure what it means at this time, but we'll figure it out eventually. Now as I head into town I run into this rock, damage my hull and lose a fish. How did I not notice that rock this morning? When we docked that night at Greater Marrow, the mayor just points us in the direction of the fishmonger. This fellow with a magnificent beard will buy our fish from us, and that profit we can actually spend at the shipwright who will sell us upgrades for our boat. Now as I understand it, we'll only be able to buy specific parts that will fit in designated spots inside our hull. Now I didn't buy anything just yet for now, but I did let her do some repairs. Now after that the mayor just hands us this research part that I haven't figured out how to use just yet, and I head to bed. The next morning I head back into open seas to catch mackerel and cod. But first, where is that rock that I crashed into last night? It was right there. As I'm fishing at these spawns, their stock of fish goes from high to medium to low, then depleted. Now, I wonder if there's any benefit in preventing them from getting depleted. While I'm exploring, I also find schools of fish that I can't interact with. Apparently there are multiple types. Now this one is shallow and my equipment only lets me fish at spots that are coastal. There are also plenty of dredge to be found all over, mostly lumber, but I don't have the equipment to actually dredge it up just yet. I finally check out the radial menu at the left side. Apparently we can do more than just control our lights. We also have access to a foghorn and a spyglass through which we can check out the types of fish from afar. It's already past sunset when I head back to town and I notice the school of mackerel at the entranceway to town actually changed into squid. I better take a few of those with me as well. Now after catching a few, the encyclopedia actually explains how certain fish will only show up in certain areas and at specific times. That's going to be really helpful for completing mission objectives. As I roll up on town, I notice for the very first time this red ominous beam of light on the other side of the island. Not a single hair on my head is even considering to head there right now. The fishmonger immediately hands me my very first task. He wants a grey eel and a flounder. But for that I will need a rod that lets me fish in shallow waters. So after selling the fish in my hull, I buy the required rod from the shipwright. Straight after installing the rod into my boat, the lighthouse keeper tells me there's nothing here for me and that I should move on. Then she just shuffles off up the hill towards the lighthouse. Mysterious much? Either she's the crazy cat lady or the wise woman who knows what's really going on around here. On top of that, the mayor just hands us a package that is slightly dripping and asks us to bring it to the other town, Little Marrow, but that's a job for tomorrow. Before I head to bed, I notice this huge button right next to it saying research. Now I have no clue how I missed that yesterday. Now as I understand it, we can use the research parts that we received yesterday from the mayor to actually unlock new parts for the ship at the shipwright. I donated my one part towards a new type of rod that will let me fish in both shallow and coastal water at the same time, essentially removing the need for the second rod, because I think I need to conserve as much space as possible on our boat, and the less gear we need, the more fish we can bring back. On day 3 I head towards Little Marrow, catching grey eels, flounders and stingrays along the way. Now the dock worker greets me and he takes the passage from me without giving me any clue what was in it. At least I got paid, so that's something. He also gave me a book that he strongly suggests that I read while fishing. Now the book is called Sustainable Fishing, so maybe he's more concerned with the environment than I would have figured out. Little Marrow also seems to have a trader here that will let me sell all kinds of trinkets when I find some. Cool. When I'm back at Great Marrow, it's already past 8 PM, so I turn in the 2 fish at the fishmonger and sell the rest. He also gave me another book called Rods, Reels and Rigs. I'll read that after the first one. Then he immediately has another goal for me. This time he wants a couple of squids and a black grouper. Both only show up during the night, so let's head back out. But first the mayor just lets me know that I already paid off my debt and the profits are used to open up the dry dock. Now, essentially this will serve as another way to upgrade my boat, giving me more space for cargo, engines, rods and so on. And unfortunately I need to supply materials like lumber and metal scraps, but I can't collect those just yet. Now all these upgrade systems are becoming quite confusing really quickly, so let me just clarify what each does. The research tree will let me unlock better equipment or just new kinds, but I don't get these for free, I still need to buy them at the shipwright. The same NPC also offers services at the dry dock, where I can unlock more available squares in my hull to place the different types of equipment or just make my boat bigger and more resilient in general. And then of course we have the books that the NPCs just throw at my head all the time. Now I can only read one of those at a time while I'm fishing or moving, and these give me perks that let my boat fish faster, make my guy panic a lot less, or just deplete skulls of fishes not as fast. My nighttime fishing expedition actually went quite well. I caught the squids and the grouper without a problem, but the eye up top is becoming a little bit more freaked out than before. By the way, the rock that I crashed into earlier is back. It's 7 in the morning by the time that I arrive back at Great Marrow. I turn in the fish at the fishmonger and now he wants me to start catching crabs for him. Now, luckily I don't need to go look for those, but rather just drop off these crab pots and just check them in a few days. I buy a few extra crab pots for him because they seem as a really easy way to make some extra money. Unfortunately, they do lose durability over time and will need to be repaired after a few days. We'll see over time if they were actually worth the cost. I also got my first additional light for the boat because I desperately need more visibility during the night. As I'm exploring the open sea outside the enclave, I notice a light in the not too far distance. It seems to be a boat, so I head into that direction. Now when I finally got there, I actually find myself talking to a door. Now the courier on the other side of the door mentions that he's too scared to deliver a package to the dock worker at the Little Marrow. Seriously, what is this guy into? The courier just talks about how his boat was nearly swallowed whole by a huge Leviathan, but only managed to escape by heading towards shallow water. These undeep areas seem to serve as some kind of safe zone during the night. I end up taking the package from the courier and promise to bring it to the dock worker. It is oozing a dark fluid from the corner, is that normal? At least he gave me another book to read for my trouble. It's of course nighttime by the time I head back home, but luckily no sight of a huge Leviathan just yet. I found the shrine spreading this red mist into the sky and seems to demand the sacrifice of cod. I'm definitely coming back for this later. When I was about to turn a corner into the quite familiar enclave that's called the Marrow's area, I heard a foghorn and saw another ship in the distance. Now as soon as I decide to put on my big boy pants and just head into its direction, the ship disappears into the fog. That was freaky. Almost back at Great Marrow, I suddenly start seeing eyes all around me. I'm not sure at this point if they're a threat to me or just meant to freak me out. If it was the latter, they succeeded. I emptied my crab pots and got a common crab and one with a huge claw. I turned them in for the fishmonger's latest request and went to bed. On day 5 I turned in the package to the dock worker, he just thanked me, told me to wish him luck and he ran off. I have so many questions about this guy. As soon as I dropped that off, I noticed another message in the bottle in the open seas. It's also from the newlywed bride and details how they ran into a rock and lost a few items. That can happen to the best of us. Her husband seems to blame it on renaming his boat. There seems to be a lot of superstition going around these parts. As soon as I put down the message, I noticed this fishing spot with a faint glow above it. Of course, I need to check it out. I caught an aberration of a god called the All-Seeing God. Wherever I go, he's always staring at me. This thing has to be worth a lot of coin. I depleted the fishing spot, but I only got the normal kind after the aberration. But I first rather head back to the shrine I visited the day before. It was asking for a lot of cod and my hull is filled with it. I'm not sure to which dark god I'm sacrificing these fish, but I end up getting a new piece of equipment. It seems to be a rod that will let me fish at both coastal and shallow spots, which is exactly what I wanted. Now the one that we can get through the research tree will still be better as it will let me fish faster, but this is great for now. As soon as I arrive at the Greater Marrow, the mayor and the shipwright just complain about how tired I look. Everyone's a critic. The fishmonger is rather more interested in the special cod that I brought with me. He slices it open and pulls out a handkerchief from the fish's guts, which is odd to say the least. A mysterious man shows up quickly enough and asks for my attendance at his house, which is on an island to the east of here. Back to the fishmonger. Now his latest request is for another aberration. Apparently he wants to know if eating a mutated fish like the all-seeing cod that I caught earlier will make you sick, mad or something else. Each to their own, I guess. I head back out to catch a few fish, so I feel like I did something productive that day. But by the time it's the early afternoon, I'm letting my fisherman get some shut-eye, mostly just to literally shut that annoying eye on top. The next day the panic has subsided and we head towards Blackstone Isle to meet the collector. Now he tasks us to scour the 7 seas, or however many there are in this game, and bring back a variety of lost relics. He's after 5 very specific items: a key, a music box, a ring, a necklace and a watch. According to the pursuit, this will take us to all corners of the map, so this will most likely be the main campaign of the game. But in order to help us take this massive task on, the collector outfits our boat with a dredge crane, so we can actually finally start collecting some building materials and of course, the relics. I immediately want to try out this new plaything and I find myself being bad at the completely new minigame. Now by the time I've gathered a few things, it's already nighttime. I start heading back to Greater Marrow, but then an old familiar friend shows up. A foghorn sounds in the distance and I see the other ship again. As I head into its direction, it suddenly takes a fast turn and heads straight towards me. Now immediately this feels wrong and I am completely right because it's a huge anglerfish that was luring me towards it. The monster attacks me once and immediately disappears again into the fog. I guess that was our very first encounter with the hostile wildlife. Once I arrive back at Greater Marrow, the lighthouse keeper greets me and I get to ask her about any lost relics in the vicinity. Now she points me at a point where the current carries in wreckage from the sea, haphazardly also the spot that ominous red beam originates from. Yeah, that sounds about right. A new character also shows up, the Builder, and she is really tired of Greater Marrow and she wants to just go live on an island called Steel Point. She wants me to bring a few building materials there, so why not? On top of that, I found earlier that day a snag squid. Now exactly the type of mutant that the fishmonger wants to eat. I hand it in and before you know it, he throws me out of the shop, bars the door behind me and I find myself locked out for the night. He did throw me some research parts on the way out, so I unlocked a fancy rod that will let me fish in coastal and shallow water, a better engine, and on top of that the hydraulic rod that will let me fish in the oceans. Now I just need to make money first so I can actually buy any of it. Next up I head towards Steel Point to complete the builder's request. Now luckily there are multiple dredging opportunities to be found there and before you know it I drop off all the required building materials at the dock. But it's late, so let's just dock here for the night. In the morning I dredge up some more materials for the dry dock upgrades and make my way back to Greater Marrow. I do stop by at a few of the fishing spots with a glow above them as they seem to have a guaranteed chance to find a mutated fish. When I arrive, the fishmonger greets me while suffering from apparently the world's worst hangover ever. Now at the dry dock I unlock an upgrade that will let me equip fish nets, for which I immediately unlock the next tier through researching it. All these potential upgrade systems are just quite confusing at this point. Talking about upgrades, the shipwright also gives me a book that will let me move faster when I have fully read it. The next morning I ferry the builder to her new home and receive 2 more research parts for my trouble. Now as I'm exploring the area around her home I find this distress signal. Now, I found this castaway that fell off his boat and before I know it I'm ferrying him to Little Marrow. If fishing doesn't work out for me, I can still become a ferry service for hire. As I'm heading to Little Marrow, I see another ship, most likely that angler Leviathan from earlier, chasing me. As I'm getting away, I of course run into this massive rock. Now the damage is quite severe, but I can't slow down as the ghost ship is getting closer by the second. Fortunately, as soon as I approach the dock of Little Marrow, the monster turns around without a doubt looking for an easier meal. The castaway rewards me with a signet ring that I sell to the trader for $70, but quickly I'm approached by a grieving father. Now he tells me the story of how he lost his son at sea and now he wants me to look for a belt buckle that holds significant sentimental value. I'll get right on that, sir. With the 2 research parts I got from the builder, I unlock the next tier of engine and I go to bed. In the morning I catch a few fish along the way to Greater Marrow. The ship is badly damaged and this is the only shipwright I know of so far. I let her switch out my engine for a new one, which should let me move almost twice as fast. For the rest of the day I just catch a few fish for some quick cash. In the morning of day 12, it's time to finally head towards the spot where the lighthouse keeper expects one of the lost relics to be. And of course she was right. I find this dredge spot where the minigame is even harder than before. But after an embarrassing amount of time, I finally succeed in fishing up an ornate key, which looks fancy and less scary than I would have guessed. I may have been expecting a few more skulls or something. I immediately bring it to the collector and quickly he's becoming really agitated that finding all these relics will take more time than he likes. Now, using the book that he holds so dear, he does cast some type of magic on me. Apparently he can grant me powers from the deep, in this case the spell Haste. Now my boat can move really fast in short bursts, but I do need to pay attention that the engine doesn't overheat. In the evening, back at Great Marrow, I buy the hydraulic rod from the shipwright, which will let me fish in the oceans. Weirdly enough, on day 13 I'm having a hard time finding any of those specific fishing spots with the oceanic type. The days before I found them constantly. During my search I do find a gold belt buckle, which the grieving father will definitely appreciate. I do find one spot of oceanic fish where I managed to fish up a black tip reefed shark and a mutated version of it. On day 14, I start preparing for my journey towards the Gale Cliffs, the first major group of islands that we need to visit to find one of the lost relics. I end up spending my time dredging and fishing for most of the day to unlock as many upgrades from the dry dock as possible. The area right next to the builder's new home seems to be a gold mine of building materials, which makes this quite easy. This actually took most of day 14 and 15. As soon as I'm done completing the first 4 upgrades at the dry dock, it's time to upgrade my hull to a tier 2. Now this will require fine metal, which I haven't discovered just yet, so let's just hold off on that one for now. I immediately switch out the crappy light that I had for this big one and add another engine to the boat. After that I fish quite a bit in order to make some money so I can buy the fish nets from the shipwright. I don't know if there will be a shipwright in Gale Cliff, so I'd like to have this already in the bag before I head that way. By the end of day 17 I've picked up my crab pots, installed the fish net, and I'm ready for the journey towards the new island. As soon as the sun rises on day 18 I'm off. I pass by a few islands along the way that I will definitely check out later on, but today I don't want to take the risk of having to navigate the open seas during the dark, though it does seem like I overestimated how long the journey would take. Now as the name suggested, Gale Cliffs is a group of these mountainous areas that form a maze-like pattern. I do find some sense of civilization as I see a town in the distance and a small floating dock. Now the latter houses the traveling merchant who will be our fishmonger, dry dock and shipwright all in one. I don't know why I was worrying about this. So my new favorite person in the world gives me a mission to catch a variety of fish that I've never heard about, but what she does have is a refined metal for sale. Most of the remainder of day 18 and whole day 19 is just me catching fish to make enough money to buy this metal. Now I'm glad I brought my fish net and crab pots to speed this along. The fish net is essentially a passive way to catch fish as you're moving around without clogging up your inventory. It's more effective in certain areas than others, just like the crab pots, but I'll take any shortcut that I can get at this point. The Gale Cliffs itself is as claustrophobic as you can get. The cliffs hover over you, sometimes dropping rocks on your head if you don't watch out. Now there are these small tornadoes that will damage your boat if you run into them, but it's basically an area with completely new dangers, but also one familiar thing. During the night I see this familiar red beam of light coming from a shipwreck that is hiding behind a wall of stone debris. I guess that's where I'll find the relic. First I need to find a way to clear that debris out of the way. I didn't find much help in the town of Ingveld, a former whaling town. There's an old whaler whose brother moved somewhere else when the going got tough, and a woman who would like to eat some rotting conger eels. Each to their own, but not for me, lady. I did pick up another message in a bottle, but not from our newlyweds this time, rather an artifact manifest naming a few things, including the music box that we're after. According to this, it has the letter J scratched into it. Wasn't the bride called Julie? I believe it's fair to assume that this music box and the other lost relics belonged to the newlyweds and probably were the items that they lost after hitting a rock. The plot thickens. On day 20 I managed to buy the refined metal, but I still need extra funds to actually pay for the upgrade. Once again I need to supply the materials and pay for the labor. She's one hell of a business lady. That evening I put on my big boy pants and went looking for the conger eels that the lady was asking for. Now, apparently they only show up during the evening and between these huge cliffs. It doesn't take long before I encounter the reason why all these whales left. A huge one-eyed giant eel with massive spiked fins just patrols these cliffs. He catches me by surprise and I'm quickly running off to lick my wounds and without any of the conger eels to show for it. On day 21 I'm back on the prowl during the evening for conger eels. This time I saw the giant menace coming my way, but I actually managed to damage my boat again by running it into the cliffs while dodging the huge beast in these narrow passageways. This shipwright is earning big on my expense. Day 22. Now I finally have the money I need to upgrade my boat to the next tier of hull. Now it does look a little bit more beefier now, but I barely see any difference. Now, along with the visual upgrade, I now have more storage to work with and can take an additional hit before we start sinking. A margin I will sure come to appreciate around here. That evening I take another road into the cliffs and I find myself finally the Conger eels. However, I do find myself far from town in the dark, so I stop at this abandoned base camp that rewards me with a research part for my curiosity. That morning as I head back to town, I find this dredging spot with a gold shine to it. As I'm dredging it up, the giant eel just sneaks up on me and hits me again. Apparently, unlike the giant anglerfish, he doesn't mind the daylight. The dredging spot rewarded me with an ivory family crest that I have no clue what to do with. When I finally arrive at the floating dock, I sell everything but one conger eel and I repair the ship again. Now I just need to wait till this eel is rotting before I can turn him in. On day 24, I hand over the rotten conger eels to the lady and receive a cool $150 for it. Go enjoy puking your guts out, lady. After that, I filled my day by exploring islands in the area. I found a wrecked ship that looks surprisingly a lot like mine. I got a few items from it, among a note filled with scribbles. Now, when it says 5 equals rise, is he talking about the 5 lost relics? On another island, I find this hooded figure in a golden robe. He just holds out a scroll asking for a red snapper. Luckily enough, I just caught one in the nearby area. Now, as soon as I hand it over, he tears into it and eats the fish's heart. At this point, I'm not even surprised anymore. What else is this type of figure going to do with a fish? Next up, he asks for a fang tooth, but that one I haven't seen just yet. I guess we got another pursuit to fulfill in due time. On day 25, I still have no clue how I'm ever going to clear this debris in front of the shipwreck that's holding my relic. But then I noticed this dock. Meet the hermit. He seems to be the younger brother of the whaler, and if I want access to explosives to blow up the debris blocking my path, well, then I will need to fix their sibling rivalry first. The only way to do this is by heading into the lair of the Leviathan, roaming these parts and retrieve a... Wait, a family quest? I've got that. Let's give that to the brother, the relationship is fine again. I pick up the hermit, drop him off at the whaler, and now we can buy explosives. Awesome. On day 26, I'm blowing up every path blocked by debris in this place. Not only is it fun, but now it's just also much easier to maneuver this place, stretch up some refined metal, and the music box that the collector wants so badly. On day 27, I'm dredging up a few more building materials for the dry dock, and on day 28, I'm off to the Marrow area once again. Along the way, I do stop by a few other islands to loot some shipwrecks, except for that one. By the time it's evening, I'm handing over the music box to the collector. Now, he doesn't tell me anything about it, but he rewards me with a new ability that will let me teleport back to his house. Okay, so that's quite a different type of power level than just making my boat move really fast for a really short time. That same evening, I head back to the Greater Marrow area where the Lightkeeper just scolds me for leaving town. I guess she's warming up to me. The next few days I'm just cruising around this extremely familiar area and I'm collecting a bunch of materials. Now at this point it's really hard to resist the temptation of unlocking one dry upgrade after the other. By the time it's already day 32, I've supplied the building materials for the next tier upgrade of my boat and just need to collect the required money for it. At this point I've also outfitted my boat with a better light and enough rods that will let me fish up at all kinds of fishing spots. That same day I head towards the Stellar Basin, a tropical chain of islands that form a circle. On my way there I visit some of the surrounding areas, dredging up some treasure along the way. I do find this wooden chest on the beach that contains a doubloon and a small scrap of paper. This has to be part of a treasure map. Awesome. I arrive at Stellar Basin during the evening. A monster is roaring in the distance as I'm seeking shelter. Now this place has a lot of bioluminescent fish and coral, which looks extremely cool as the darkness sets in. It also has one of these huge crab things. Luckily, I can always count on a traveling merchant. Our friend from the Gale Cliffs is now here to make me pay for everything. So let's just sleep here for the night and check out the area the next morning. Now, I still need to collect the money to pay for my next tier upgrade, so immediately I want to throw down my crab pots all over the place. And then it happens. Now, the 4 surrounding sandy islands form this circle, and in the middle there's a massive empty hole. Wrong. It holds a huge octopus-like monster that smacks me around as soon as I get close. Now my boat is smoking, meaning there's fire on my wooden boat in the middle of the ocean. Let's just head back to the traveling merchant for repairs and let's stay clear from the center for now. Now for the rest of the day I end up catching a lot of the regional fish like barracudas, glow squids and groupers. And in the evening I find the abandoned resort that the merchant was talking about. I heard this familiar sound, but as I'm looking for it I noticed a new threat. Now all these patrolling red jellyfish who seem to work as some kind of moving landmines. What is also interesting that the red beam that shows the location of the lost relic we're after comes from the dead center of the area. Great. On day 34, it's a bright new day with the profits of the day before I buy the next tier upgrade for my boat. Now, it's bigger and sturdier, so that's awesome. Then I head straight away off to the abandoned resort. I blow up a few walkways blocking my path, find a piece of refined metal, and dredge up some more building materials. Now, when I dock again at the traveling merchant to deposit my building materials for the next dry dock upgrades, I hear that sound again. It sounds like barking. Now, eventually I find this dog on the backside of the abandoned resort and she seems to be abandoned as well. After completing a combination of calling it, approaching it, patting it and feeding it fish, the dog finally trusts me enough to come with me on the boat. With the dog on board, I continue my exploration of the area and I find some sort of abandoned research post, complete with a generator and a laboratory where they were building some kind of prototype. The outpost seems to have been attacked by some kind of monster and my only clue is a note referencing a fort. In the morning of day 36, I see indeed a silhouette of a fort in the distance. Now it seems to have been upgraded with a giant satellite dish on its highest tower. I wonder what channels they get. Before I dock, I find another message in a bottle. This one is once again from Julie, the bride, detailing how her husband popped the question and what a beautiful ring he gave her. Most likely the ring we're after. A researcher greets me as I dock at the fort. She fled here after monster attacks and now she asks my help with collecting the specimens she needs for her research. Now, all three of the requested fish need to be fished in different ways. One can be fished with a rod, another one needs to be caught by a fish net, and the third needs to be trapped with a crab pot. This shouldn't take long. I just need to reinstall my fish net, but before I do that I ask her if she's lonely and would like some company. Not my company, but the dog's. Soon enough, she has a new lab assistant who throws up at my feet to thank me for everything I did for him. The doctor fishes up a sapphire ring out of his puke and hands it to me. Guess pickings were slim at the resort. That night I set out to catch the 3 requested specimens, which I turn in 2 days later during the evening of day 38. The doctor explains how she developed a repulsion machine that produces a bright light and emits a high-pitched noise. In theory, it should deter the giant tentacle creature from attacking, or probably piss it off while I'm floating in front of its lair. Great. First we need to assemble the machine and the prototype parts were left behind in our laboratory. I guess I'll go fetch them. When I arrive there I find another message in a bottle. This one is quite disturbing. Apparently a dredging crew found a wooden casket and after opening it one man stared down into the open casket. Then he turns to the writer who saw the void in the man's eyes. Spooky. The researcher assembled the prototype parts into the repulsion machine and unlocks gear that will let me fish in abyssal and hadal fishing spots. If you're wondering what hadal is, like me, well, Google describes it as the deepest regions of the ocean. Any part of the ocean that is deeper than 6 kilometers. Now I'm even more curious what I can dredge up from those fishing spots. And so is the researcher, as she asked me to bring her 4 specific specimens that you can only fish above the tentacle monster's lair. Later that day, I hook up the repulsion machine to the generator at the research outpost and as promised, the monster recedes into its lair, giving me free reign of the area. At least for now, because the generator will run out of fuel after a few hours. I immediately head to the last relic and just dredge that up first. Now in theory, I could head back to the collector straight away, but I'd rather finish up all the pursuits in this area first. The next few days I scour the area for the 4 specimens that the researcher requires. Now while I do this I actually also find a gulper eel, which is one of the 4 fish that the traveling merchant asked me for on day 18. The researcher tells me that her research proves that the Leviathan in the basin actually damages everything there is on a cellular level by just being there or by intent. That seems ominous. At least I got a book out of it. On day 42 I'm planning to leave the area, but then I remember that I actually found a part of a treasure map when I arrived here. I decide to prolong my stay a bit longer and search for the 2 other parts. Now by 6 PM I had actually already found the last 2 remaining scraps of paper. It takes me a second to identify the islands on the map, but on day 43 I find a chest chained to something heavy in the middle of the ocean. I get a piece of refined metal, a research part and quite a few trinkets for my trouble. Now let's head back to the collector, but let's just use the new ability. The manifest ability just tears my boat to pieces and transports me instantly to the collector. That looked painful. This time he awards me with the banish ability, a blazing light that dispels and protects. I assume it'll scare off the big bad monsters as long as it lasts. Now this time I get the opportunity to ask the collector about the old mayor of Little Marrow. Now the last time the old mayor came up was during my conversation with the grieving father on day 10. Now of course the collector writes him off as a blabbering fool just like the grieving father did, but somehow I feel like there's more to this story. The next few days I'm selling the trinkets I found at the trader in Little Marrow, collecting building materials and buying upgrades at the dye dock. I want this boat to be fully pimped out by day 100, though I don't think it'll take that long at this rate. On day 45 I'm heading towards Twisted Strand, a completely new area. Okay, granted not completely by my own free will. I was exploring an island between the Marrows and the Twisted Strand and I found myself being stuck there in the middle of the evening. The only light I saw within reach was the traveling merchant's boat in Twisted Strand, so yeah, that's why I'm here. On day 46, my adventure in Twisted Strand truly begins, and trust me, it's quite a ride. I sacrificed the first few hours to regain some sanity because the eye on top is just staring a little too intense at me. Now the traveling merchant tells me how she doesn't like to go inside this overgrown mangrove because the trees keep moving. Oh boy. I head through the main entrance and I'm immediately greeted by this huge trap in this arena-like area. Now, right behind it, I see from the water rise a monster that I don't even know how to describe. He immediately starts chasing me and increasing my panic with his red laser-like telepathic ability or something. As soon as possible, I'm getting out of there and I'm quickly navigating a maze-like mangrove. Now, passages are blocked, some by debris that I can blow up, but most by roots that seem to shift at random times. On the bright side, I did find a tattered receipt in a bottle. People place the weirdest things in these bottles. Now, this one is for the selling and engraving of a necklace. The inscription reads, "For Jay, my shining star." Now, I really wonder what's so special about this newlywed couple and their stuff. I also found one more rock slab that requires the sacrificial of some fish that are still unclear to me. Just like in every new area, I am finding completely new fish. Here I am catching longfin eels, catfishes, gar and blackfin tuna. They seem to sell for quite a nice amount at the merchant, so I should get a few more upgrades quickly enough. Day 47, fresh start. I once again enter through the main entrance and I find myself again staring down this Loch Ness monster meets snailhead. Guess I can describe them after all. Now, whatever these creatures are, they seem to be attracted to movement, so of course I try to lure him into this massive trap, but that doesn't work, so I guess I need to start running again. Now, but before I can, he seems to be able to panic my guy so much that the very roots of the forest start whipping me. I'm still not sure how panic works in this game. Okay, so a quick visit to make some repairs, but just as I arrive at the traveling merchant, a shark comes out of nowhere and hits me like a torpedo. These things don't seem to happen during the day, so my panic must be causing this. I decide to repair the boat and sleep for the rest of the day. Okay, let's try this again. I enter through the main entrance, rush past his snailhead, and I quickly find an army pilot with a magnificent mustache. He tells me about how he crashed here along with his platoon, of which those who didn't die by the crash were killed by the snailheads. He calls them mind suckers, so let's call them that as well. It might sound cooler than snailheads, to be fair. Now the airman is just dead set on killing these 3 mind suckers that live in Twisted Strand, and he has a plan. His army buddies were actually carrying pieces of a mortar that he could use to blow these 3 mind suckers to smithereens. Sounds like a plan to me. On top of that, he will reward me with a research part for every dog tag that I will bring him, so that's cool. Now it's just up to me to find the wrecked airplanes. Now, I found the very first one quite easily that same evening. The second one I found during day 49, but I stayed way too late in the forest dredging materials and fishing up for some quick cash. I constantly hear the roots moving around me, opening up passageways and locking down others. So in the early hours of day 50, I ended up finding this message in a bottle that didn't give me much information, a dog tag and a crab disguised as the ship. Now, I know these guys are traps, but I really love encountering them. I met up with the airman again and gave him the mortar, some assembly required. Now we just need to get these mind suckers to stay still so we can hit them with a mortar shell. You guessed it, we're going to be using those traps that we've been seeing. Now he needs me to catch some very specific fish in order to craft 3 completely different bait in order to lure each of the mind suckers to the trap. So I have 2 questions. Why does each of the 3 bait require different fish to make? This essentially means that each bait will taste and smell different. So how do 3 creatures of the exact same species have different dietary preferences, and how does the pilot know this? Never mind, I'll just go get him his fish and mind my own business. By the next morning I got the required fish for 2 of the 3 baits, so let's just try that out. So I just placed down the food and then... That was brutal. Let's do it again. That's quite some engineering. In the wee hours of day 52, I fish the last required catfish for the last bait. I also blow up this debris and fish up this Goliath tigerfish, which is one of the fish that the traveling merchant was asking about. 2 more to go on that pursuit. And then on my way to the airman, I find this weird abandoned camp which has 3 distinct sets of symbols scribbled on a tree. The first set of symbols describes a book underneath a wave and then an upward arrow. Maybe a book that was dredged up? A book that comes from the deepest corners of the ocean? Sounds like the book that the collector holds so dear. The second set of symbols displays 5 unfamiliar symbols marking the corners of a pentagram with a person lying down in the center. I assume the 5 lost relics will make up the pentagram and hopefully I won't be the sacrifice in the middle of it. It doesn't say that the person in the middle will be sacrificed, but when pentagrams are involved, the odds aren't in your favor. The third row of symbols has a book above a wave with a downwards arrow pointing from the book down through the wave. Now maybe throwing the book into the water is a way to seal or stop the ritual. I guess we'll find out which one it is later on. I hand in the fish at the pilot and get the last piece of bait. Afterwards I do a quick pit stop at the traveling merchant, get 2 research parts for both a Goliath tigerfish and a gulper eel that I caught earlier. That's not bad. In the morning of day 53, I finally read the pursuit for the airmen, and I actually realized that I should have been turning in the corpses of the mine suckers for the pilot. Be right back. Now, at this point, I'm drifting around bends in this forest while making my way to the last trap. I don't think I will ever get bored of seeing that. As I turn in the last body of the mine suckers, the airman, he just kind of flies into a rage and he starts staring at the carcass with a knife and pulls out the 4th last relic out of it, the necklace. I'll be taking that, kind sir. He decides to stay here, but he unlocks the ability to throw down bait wherever I am and instantly create a fishing spot for myself. That could be useful, but I don't see why just yet. I use Manifest and return instantly to the Marrows. This time the collector imbues me with the ability Atrophy, which will let me instantly harvest an entire school of fish. I'm not sure how often I'll end up using that, but I'll take it. Thank you very much, person that will most likely sacrifice me later on. Day 54, I was dredging up building materials for the last tier upgrade of my boat. I still need to sell about $1,500 worth of fish before I can actually put the shipwright to work though. The next day I head towards Devil's Spine, the last area that I haven't visited yet and the home of the last lost relic. Now this area looks as ominous as it gets. Now luckily I do see one familiar thing, the traveling merchant. Now my best guess is that some type of volcanic eruption sunk this island by quite a bit, making it so only these temple walls stick out of the water. It's going to be a completely new maze to make sense of. Volcanic eruptions are just boiling the very water right below me. I just hope the fisherman has air conditioning in his cabin at this point. I did find a new kind of altar that requests 2 giant crabs. Now that I think about it, I think I actually forgot my crab pots back at Twisted Strand. I'll just go buy a few more. As every area before it, this one also brings a completely new threat with it as well. Numerous of these bright red piranhas that just love to slow you down. I'm not sure if that's all they do just yet, but it can be good for my panic meter either way. The next day I explore the area a bit more, find some treasure, try to get a lay of the land, but without a doubt this fanatic is the most interesting part. He seems to be all for the demise of the world and I'm playing along. Apparently he's holding the last relic that I'm after, the pocket watch, but I will receive it from him when I pass the trials to replace his role in all this. Whatever this is. The official title is the Herald of the Purge, so I'm guessing whichever Cthulhu god he believes in it will most likely bring a cleansing of the world, or rather a swallowing of all land by the water. I'm not completely sure if the collector is after this as well, but the odds aren't looking too good at this point. Now the trials laid before me is essentially sacrificing the required fish at the 3 altars, of which I already found 1. Doing that for each altar, which will give me a flame to light the 3 statues behind the fanatic. Sounds like the typical ritual thing to do. That night I also saw a new type of ghost ship in the ocean. I can only imagine what type of anglerfish swims below that. In the morning of day 57 I start looking for the 2 other altars to see what they want. Now I didn't find them straight away, but I did find 2 things. I fished up a stone tablet that opens up a pursuit at the trader in Little Marrow, so I've got a reason to go back. The other thing I found, however, is Mommy Piranha. She seems to be the area's patrolling monster. Later on I would find out that the smaller ones actually slow you down and alert the big one of your presence at the same time. It's a whole thing. Now, at this point I can't stress enough how annoying these tight passageways are. It's really easy to damage your boat, and on top of that a lot of the entranceways to these corridors are blocked by smaller piranhas. Now luckily there are tons of walls that can be destroyed with explosives, but the problem is I don't have a lot of them in storage. And the traveling merchant will only sell me one once a day, so that's not great either. On day 58 I finally collect enough money to buy the last tier of hull upgrades at the dry dock. I also discovered that I can scare away the smaller fish with the banish ability, so that helps out a lot. Today I also blew up some debris between 2 rocks and I fished up this coelacanth. Now this is going to be one of the 2 last remaining fish that I had to find for the traveling merchant. I assume the last one I need is at Gale Cliffs because I found 1 in each of the 3 other areas, but only in Gale Cliffs I haven't found 1 just yet. On day 59 I finally get the last crab I needed for one of the 3 altars, and it rewards me immediately with a few trinkets that I can sell at the trader and this fathomless flame. I'm pretty sure I'm mispronouncing that. Straight after I find the second altar that I need, but it's out of my reach until I get some more explosives. Now I need to clear this debris rather sooner than later, or otherwise I will be constantly hunted or cornered by the mother piranha. Now the only other vendor that sells explosives is the whaler at Gale Cliffs, and he'll sell you 5 explosives a day. Now for that reason in the evening I made the decision to actually use the manifest ability and return to the Marrow area. From here the journey to Gale Cliffs will take no time, but first I visit Little Marrow to talk with the trader about the stone tablet I found. He tells me there are 2 more to be found in Devil's Devil's Spine and that he will be able to combine them into something cool, so that sounds good. In the morning, I'm at Gale Cliffs in no time. With the profit of all the trinkets I sold at the trader, I buy immediately 5 explosives from the whaler. Now, as you may guess, I also have an ulterior motive for coming here. I need to catch an oarfish for the traveling merchant, and I immediately know where. I see a huge waterfall in the distance, and then I remember the first rule of any game. I fish up the oarfish, find the treasure pot as well, and head back to the traveling merchant. Weirdly enough, I actually forgot to turn it in for a few days. In the morning I bought another 5 explosives and I suddenly feel as ready as I'll ever be to return to Devil's Spine. I stop along the way at the hooded figure in the golden robe because I just frankly forgot what he was asking for. When I got there he was no longer moving, implying that he died while waiting for me to return. Whoops. I guess this pursuit had a time limit and I didn't know that, so now I actually have 1 failed quest. Guess I'll have an excuse to play Dredge again later on. Devastated by my failure, I destroy my ship with a manifest ability. I quickly head to Steel Point where the builder lives to collect a few building materials that I need for the last dry dock upgrades. I end up not getting everything I need, but I'm sure I'll find it at Devil's Spine. And that's where I'm off to in the morning. I do pass by one island that I haven't visited before and I find it to be inhabited by almost a living legend. Meet the old mayor of Little Marrow who went crazy. Just look at those eyes. He acts as if he knows me, which is weird, though I'm not sure what still counts as weird in this world. On top of that, he keeps asking me if I threw the book back. As far as I know, I've never even touched the collector's book up to this point. He reveals some history on it though. Apparently it was a newlywed couple whose messages we've been reading that dredged up the book in the very first place. And as they did, something came up from the deep as well and destroyed their boat. Now he describes it as a book that's covered in her blood. So everything seems to be tied together. Now, as I understand it, the newlywed couple went on their honeymoon, they lost a few of their items which I've been chasing. They dredged up that book which brought a monster with it and destroyed their boat, most likely killing the bride Julie in the process. Now the collector holds the book, so that could mean that he's the husband of Julie? Does he want to bring back his wife using her items as some kind of medium? I don't know. Let's just go get a pocket watch and see what happens. Back at Devil's Spine, I start looking around for the altars, the fish I need to sacrifice at them, and the tombstone tablets that I promised the trader. Each day I head out a little further, having plenty of encounters with the mommy piranha. The banish and haste ability already saved me a few times at this point. On day 65 I found this ancient lighthouse that is locked and can only be opened with a square-shaped key. But on day 67, I actually sacrificed at the 3rd altar and got the last flame I need. I head straight away to the fanatic to turn in the flame, tell him it's done, and then he performs some type of transference ritual that turns him into a pile of ash, from which I recover the pocket watch. I'm not making this up, I promise. With the pocket watch in my pocket, sorry I couldn't resist, I head to the collector. Now he says something like, with all 5 relics in my possession, we now know what to do. Beats me. He asks me to make one final voyage with him, and when he proposes this, the game tells me that this will be the final phase of the game. I'm sorry, but I still have a few things to do. I head to the trader in Little Marrow and turn in the 2 remaining stone tablets. He fuses them together into something that has a really familiar shape. That should be able to open the ancient lighthouse in Devil's Spine. Then I just follow the old mayor's crazed advice and ask the lighthouse keeper about the book. Now she shudders and she tells me that I know very well that the book must be returned and I should move on. For her sake as well as mine. Is she talking about Julie and me? During my last days in Dredge before we finish the game, I check the map for unexplored islands and I quickly find another hooded figure. Now this time sporting a dark blue robe. He asks for one type of mackerel after the other, one from the Marrow area, the second one from the Gale Cliffs. I've learned the hard way that the hooded figures can die and I won't let another of these creepy fellas croak over again. So I'm not messing around, I'm immediately getting to work on this. When I do get to the Gale Cliffs, I stop by the traveling merchant to let her know that I found the oarfish she was missing, finishing her pursuit in the meantime. Then I caught my tiger mackerel on day 69. Nice. I return to the hooded figure to be sent towards Devil's Spine for a snake mackerel. While I'm there, I head up to the ancient lighthouse, place the fused tablet into the door and find a new type of light called the Flame of the Sky along with some trinkets. It's actually not a bad upgrade for me. On my way back, I visit another unexplored island and I find a hooded man wearing a red robe. You see where this is going. Now, in the next few days, I'm racing from one place to another to fill the stomachs of these hooded figures. Each time I hand them the 3rd fish they asked for, they reward me with a book that can unlock a permanent upgrade. On day 72, I'm done with the requests for both the blue and the red robe guys, but then I actually stare at that empty space on my pursuit board. I found a robed guy in each area but a twisted strand, so you know what I've got to do. Meet Purple Robe Guy. He sends me twice a twisted strand to catch a tarpon and a horseshoe crab, then to the stellar basin for a barrel eye, which is a surprisingly cool looking fish. By the morning of day 76, I'm done with all the side activities and my boat is fully upgraded and I'm just curious what will happen next. I asked the collector straight off the bat about his book. He tries to shift the conversation to some random book on the shelf, but we set him immediately straight. We ask him how he got the book and he just responds, "Don't you remember? You were there, so was she." When I ask who he's talking about, he replies that I begged him to forget. We ask him for the book, but he doesn't answer. "You won't change a thing, the book is ours." How can it be ours? As we take a step forward, we get the option to take the book from him. We strike him straight into the jaw with our fist. Now the collector's face just shatters and falls to the ground. We were talking to a mirror all this time. The collector still talks to us as we're staring at the broken mirror with the book in our hands. He reminds us that we have the power to bring her back. Now up to this point, I actually thought that the collector lost the love of his life, but it was actually the fisherman who lost her. His sorrow and possibly the book split him into two different people. The lonely fisherman and the collector who will do everything he can to bring Julie back. Now we actually have a choice to make. If we do what the book says, we can bring Julie back, but we all know nothing ever comes for free. If we throw it back, we'll never see Julie again. I know what we want to do and I know what we need to do. I head to the lighthouse keeper again. She tells me to make use of this moment of lucidity and to throw it into the ocean. She advances time and just guides me to the location where it needs to happen at with the lighthouse. We throw the book back, but we feel the collector fighting to regain control. The book just sinks into the ocean as a huge Leviathan emerges from the water and swallows us whole. We end up making the ultimate sacrifice and saving the world at our own expense. But what if we didn't act so noble? How about we try that again and head back to the collector? We tell him we're ready to take on his final voyage. This time with the relics in hand, we head back to the same location. This time a huge familiar red beam guiding our way there. Once we actually finally arrive there, we open the book, say the unholy words and throw the relics overboard. One after the other, and then it happens. The world shakes and we see Julie emerge from the water, our lost loved one. We get our wish, but at what cost? And that's it, 100 days of Dredge. Actually only 76, but I doubt you wanted to see me fish for another 24 days to complete my encyclopedia. Thanks for watching, and next you should check out this video out here where I played 100 days in Dinkum, creating my dream village while surviving wildlife that keeps trying to kill me. See you there.